All right.
But I will admit, 2 weeks of doing absolutely
Yeah.
nothing
That's all
helped.
you
And I
want.
mean, I did nothing.
All right. Thank you and welcome to the July 16th, 2019, 9 a.m. City Council meeting for the City of Hutchinson. Please call the roll.
Deckent,
Here?
Daveline.
Here.
Soldner,
Here.
Pyros de Carvalho.
Here.
Inskeep.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our prayer today is by Mr. Gary Getting. Please, sir. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. Shall we pray? Our Father in heaven, we are so grateful for this community in which we live. It isn't perfect, of course, but we thank you for those who are working to make it a better place for all citizens, especially those in this chamber who give their time and their energy to serve us. I pray for wisdom and discernment and decisions that are made today that impact our community. I'm also mindful, Lord, of those who are out in the community as first responders serving us. We pray for your protection upon them as they watch over us. Lord, it's just great to have a place like this in which we can live and raise our families. We thank you for it, and we pray your blessing on it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next item.
Item 4, oral communications from the audience.
This is the portion of the meeting where we invite those in the audience to step forward that have something they want to bring forth before the council that is not currently on the agenda. We ask that you give your name and address and then limit your remarks to 5 minutes. Is there anybody who wants to participate in this part? We're so intimidating. All right, very good. Next item, please.
Okay, and I believe we're adding a proclamation for Emancipation Day.
Very good. All right. Whereas on January 1st, 1863, President Lincoln proclaimed that all slavery be abolished, and whereas a constant struggle has been going on to accomplish the goals of that proclamation to bring true freedom to an oppressed people, and whereas in 1935, Aaron Johnson, along with James Woodson and Lester Harrison, were members of the Kansas Lincoln Day Club of Hutchinson that sponsored the 10th annual Emancipation Program, and whereas in 1936 in Hutchinson, the Emancipation Proclamation Day Celebration Committee, a nonprofit organization, was organized to arrange proper and fitting activities in honor of emancipation, and now, therefore, I, David A. Inskeep, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim August 3rd, 2018 as Emancipation Proclamation Day in the City of Hutchinson and urge the entire community to help celebrate this important occasion. If somebody would like to step up or say some words.
First, I'd like to ask, has anyone attended any of our emancipation events annually?
Yeah.
And you enjoy yourself? And okay, we want to invite everybody. First, we'd like to invite the mayor to read the proclamation at our picnic at noon on Saturday, August 3rd. And we start our events on Thursday evening with a free movie at the college. The movie this year is An American Story, Race, Amity, and the Other Tradition. It'll be held at Stringer Fine Arts Center. Then on Friday, we have down at Avenue A Park, Avenue A in Washington, we have a 3-point shootout that begins at 5, and have a teen dance that begins at 7:30 at the Boys and Girls Club, and then a jazz in the park at 8 o'clock there at Avenue A Park. Saturday morning, we start off with a parade, and then followed by the picnic at noon. Our parade marshal this year is Willard Pugh, best known as Harpo from The Color Purple. He will do a short presentation before our picnic. Saturday evening, we have an old school dance at the fairgrounds in the encampment building, and then Sunday we complete our activities at Stringer Fine Arts Center at 3:30 with a gospel fest. And this year we will have singer-songwriter Michael McCurtis that will be featured there. He is best known, his best time was he served as the last minister of music for the late, great Andre Crouch. But he has performed with the Clark Sisters, the Winans, Walter and Edwin Hawkins, Douglas Miller, and other gospel greats. And we welcome everybody in the community to come out and join us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
5 T-shirts.
Okay. Yeah, wonderful. I'll trade you. How about that?
All right. Thank you very much.
And if you have the opportunity, absolutely, it's a great event and well done. And so we appreciate your hard work and volunteership to put it together.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
T-shirts. We'll distribute those. All right. Next item, please.
Item 5, consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep.
Yes. Next item.
Item 6A, consider resolution establishing permit fees for commercial fireworks displays.
Paul Brown, City Attorney. You'll have before you, I've given you a number of things that you don't have to approve. And want you to understand, these are for commercial fireworks displays. It has nothing to do with Safe and Sane, any of those events. These are independent commercial fireworks displays put on by a licensed person to shoot those fireworks. The fire department already has the authority to require permits. They have the authority to review the commercial fireworks displays. They don't need the council's authority for the permit or the application or to grant that. The only thing before the council is the fee, because they have the authority also under the fire code to establish a fee, but you have to have a means of establishing what that amount is. And this amount is $25. It's fairly nominal. The idea is to encourage folks to get that permit in advance. That's why it's structured in the manner that it is, that the fee increases if you don't do it 10 days in advance. And the purpose of all of this is to make certain that the fire department, amongst others, knows that these are going on. And currently, that's part of the problem, is they are not notified. And then they get calls about, well, what is this? And they also, the other thing that happens is the calls come to dispatch. Okay? And the calls are, well, we hear an explosion. We think we heard gunshots. Well, no, it's a commercial fireworks display, but none of those parties know. When this permit is issued, all of the departments will be notified in advance. That's the purpose of it.
How many of these are we dealing with annually?
Very few. The idea is some of these no one finds out about until after it's done.
I see.
Normally, you'd only see 3 or 4 in a year.
Yeah, I guess I was under the impression that out of professional courtesy, we were being made aware of those in advance, but
No,
guess that's not the
this
case.
originated from the fire department. The chief asked us to put this into place, and that's why we're doing it.
okay.
Makes sense.
Is there, and maybe I did not read it closely enough, but is there a penalty for failing to obtain a permit?
500.
Not, it's, the fire code allows for, there is a general penalty in the fire code.
Okay,
And when it's required that you get approval, they can issue a citation for that.
okay. But that would link it back to the general fire code, is what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
Not this particular
This
element?
only establishes a fee.
The fee.
We're
okay.
not changing the fire code.
So then we would, if upon approval, the fire department would take the lead in reaching out to those commercial firework
I'll probably end up
operators?
drafting a letter for them, because there's a couple that should be notified right away. Showalters, for one,
Yeah.
because many of those are done by Showalter Fireworks. And we'd also notify the Kansas State Fair, because some of those have had demonstrations and things on the fairgrounds. There's no fee charged to the fair, but when those events occur, that's part of the ones that don't necessarily notify the Hutchinson Fire Department
Yeah.
and others.
Maybe I read this wrong. So is this a requirement placed upon the commercial fireworks company or upon the entity that is having the fireworks display?
It's primarily the person that puts on the commercial fireworks. It's the I
It's
guess
the
we call him
vendor.
a vendor.
It's the vendor, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Paul, this minimum $1 million liability insurance requirement, is that pretty standard? I mean, all of them probably have that, carry that.
Those are standard policies. Just about everything that we do, we require $1 million coverage. All of our contractors that we work with, everybody's certificate of insurance has that. We also have it, and our liability is $500,000.
Well, I would move to approve resolution establishing permit fees for commercial fireworks displays and authorize the mayor to sign.
And I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 7A, consider Geochemicals letter of intent for tax exemptions.
Mayor, Council, the city received an application for tax exemptions for the construction and operation of a company that specializes in manufacturing and sales of oil and gas filled specialty chemicals. The company right now is estimating that this first phase would create between 50 to 75 jobs over the next 2 years at this site. They're in the process of constructing a roughly 10,000 square foot building that will be built at the old consolidated site, which is just a point of reference. It's actually off of 13th, but 17th and Halstead. I think you guys know where that's at. It's actually adjacent. The new construction will be adjacent to a building that Geochemical just recently purchased. The property tax exemption request does qualify under the Kansas Constitution regarding the granting of tax exemptions. City staff has determined that the application is complete and qualifies under the state law for tax exemptions, and is required through this process by law. We have to conduct a cost-benefit analysis, which has been done, and that was in your packet as well, and it did show positive benefit to all taxing entities. And so the next step in this process is really today is granting the letter of intent to proceed with the required public hearing. And so per the letter of intent before you, the public hearing will be scheduled for August the 6th at 9 a.m. in this room here. We will publish that notice of hearing as well as notifying all the other taxing entities of that hearing. The other taxing entities don't have a veto power, but they need to be notified of the hearing. So from a fiscal standpoint, based on the potential job creation, we're recommending a proposed tax exemption with a pilot, a payment in lieu of tax schedule. In your packet is a proposed schedule there, which basically shows that in year one, 95% of the taxes would be exempt. There would be a 5% in lieu of payment, and then it breaks on down to 85% year two, 75% year three, 65% year four, 55% year five, and then 50% for the remaining 5 years of the 10-year exemption. So at this point in time, staff would recommend approval of the letter of intent that is in your packet that would set the public hearing for August 6th at 9 a.m. in this room. Today we have with us Jason West from the company. If the council has any questions of staff, we stand for that. Or if you have any questions of the applicant, I'm sure Jason would be happy to address you.
Wonderful. Read my mind anyways. Not that the city manager did a bang-up job of selling you, but do you mind telling us a little bit about what you guys are up to out there? Thanks, Jason. And if you say your name.
Good morning. My name is Jason West. I'm the chairman of the board of Geochemicals. And just a general description.
If you don't mind.
If you will.
We'll start there. Yeah.
So our history in this industry is pretty long, goes back to 1982, when my dad started a company in Sterling called JCAM, put me to work when I was 6 years old. And so I've been there ever since. So that's kind of old hat, I guess, at the end of the day. So we sold that business in 2013, did a tour of duty with the new owners for about 4 years in there, and then left the business to focus on something even more competitive in pharmaceuticals. So, but then we had an opportunity to get back into the oil and gas business, just kind of came up, I guess is what I would call it. and had a lot of customers and a lot of former employees that were interested in seeing if we would be willing to get back into the industry. And so that's what we did here through an acquisition of a company in Enid, Oklahoma, is where they're based, and they have a fairly small but growing business down there, primarily in Oklahoma and in the Panhandle of Texas. And so this was an opportunity for us to join up with them and do some of the same things that we've been doing for the last 35 years or so in the industry. But the difference between that business and JCAM is that they did not have any what we would call petrochemical or organic manufacturing. And so this is kind of a step change, if you would call it, vertical integration strategy, where we manufacture the actual molecules that are needed instead of buying those molecules from someone else and then blending them together. And so that's what this facility on 14th Street is really all about, is to manufacture those products. And it's very much the same kind of concept as what's going on, still today in Sterling at JCAM. So there's a lot to the industry, and so that was a very quick
I like the surface
overview.
version. Yeah, thank you. I'm sure it goes much deeper than
It
that.
does.
The thing that caught my eye was that you believe that you'll be able to create 50 jobs in the first year, and then 200 over 10 years. Potentially is where you hope to be.
That's where we
yourself?
believe. And this site on 14th Street, we intend really to be, I guess I would call it kind of a temporary location. Our ultimate goal is to work with the city and the Chamber of Commerce to have a site at the Salt City Business Park, is actually where we'd have a kind of a more permanent facility. There's rail access there that we can gain access to, and so the idea would be to have built a larger, I guess what I would call more proper facility, a little bit more room to expand and grow, and a little bit more just in terms of square footage, if you will. So that would be our ultimate goal. But yes, a lot of this is kind of somewhat dependent on energy prices, of course. But
Sure.
if you listen to all the analysts, the oil prices should start rising in about 2020. That's the thought, and so apparently that's when global supply and global demand start to even out a little bit, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
We don't really tend to listen to the analysts very much. We just figure we can, if you do a good job and you build a good product, then the customers will come.
Okay.
So.
I might want to clarify, Mayor, too, that this application is based on 50 to 75 jobs, and the next piece of this, and I'd hoped to have had that today, we just didn't get it done, but we'll have a development agreement that we'll talk about the job incentives per our policy, where we're committing potentially up to, I think, around $50,000 up front on this project, and that'll probably be on our agenda for August the 6th. So,
Right. But that's a separate conversation.
That's separate, but it's on this site.
Yeah, makes sense. This site, yeah, okay.
Because these future jobs that Jason mentioned, there'll be a whole nother conversation about that.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Jason, terrific project, long time coming. Welcome to Hutchinson.
Thank you.
I know your roots are here, your family's roots are here in South Central Kansas, so
Very much so.
congratulations to you. And I think more importantly is that this, to me, focuses on primary jobs, and we have so much conversation in the community about primary jobs, and this sets the tone for exactly what you intend to do, is to create these primary jobs with good paying jobs with good benefits, and that's terrific. So just for clarification purposes, I think for everybody to maybe understand this, what this letter of intent, as I understand it, for is only for the real estate. The 10,000 square foot new building does not include the existing building. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
So you're only asking for the exemption on this 10,000 square foot building?
Yes.
Right, yeah. And as I did some quick math on this proposed schedule that for the 10-year pilot program, you would actually we would be exempting about 65% of $170,000, or about $60,000, and you would be paying 35%, so about a 65-35%. So,
Yeah, I think
so
that's
the public understands exactly what we're talking about in real dollars and percentages over this 10-year period for your project. This proposed investment, I know you say the building itself is only about $400,000, but your total investment is a little over $4 million, as I understand it.
substantially more due to the
Substantially
equipment.
more
And,
to the
and-
equipment,
yes,
right?
that's
Yeah,
exactly right.
Yeah. So, and what would be your time schedule for this initial project at the consolidated site?
For completion,
Yes.
I would say, it takes a little while to first place the equipment and then connect it all together or hook it up as we refer to it. So I would say it's probably a 9-month to 12-month process to get it all
To
done.
get in full operation?
Correct.
Okay.
Fully operational. There's certain ways that we can connect, one vessel at a time and start working out of that one vessel and then kind of do it in a more of a step change fashion. But
What would the
full throttle.
typical skill sets that you would be looking at in hiring these folks?
So the equipment operators, so once the plant is fully operational, is that what you're saying, or
Yeah.
kind of during the construction phase?
No, during the operation itself.
Operational phase. Really, honestly, we train the individuals that we bring in, and so there's not really necessarily a whole lot of technical chemical experience or expertise that is required. But the ability to really follow a somewhat complex batch ticket, if you will, is one aspect where we train very hard because the order of addition of certain products matters. You don't want to put the flour in before the sugar, if you will, in certain cases. And so we make sure that they're all aware of that. We actually do little lab experiments where we do it wrong purposely and show them, hey, this causes the material to be cloudy, or this causes it to gel up, or something like this. And then we just show them this is what happens at a 1,500 gallon level, but we do it in a test tube and just do it that way. So it's a lot of it is on the job type training. Honestly, a kid who grew up on a farm and knows how to work and buck bales in the
Yeah.
summertime,
There you go.
I'll take 100 of those all
Okay.
day long.
Very
Yeah.
good.
Exciting for our community, for sure.
Yeah, it sure
A
is.
question of curiosity.
Yes,
You were
sir.
talking about you're going to be creating, making, manufacturing the organic products.
Mhm.
So will you also then you'll be mixing those into and creating then the final
Uh-huh.
chemical compound that will then become the wholesale or retail
Yes.
product that goes out?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah, you picked up on a really kind of interesting nuance. We build the base materials, but then we also build the finished goods as well. And then in very much kind of a cradle to grave kind of format, we then actually are who delivers it, not only to a warehouse kind of on a hub and spoke concept. So if we have a warehouse, let's say in Williston, North Dakota, or Midland, Texas, then we would deliver to that warehouse, and then we have a team of guys there that would deliver to the actual pump jack to the wellhead location. And so we're actually making it, delivering it, applying it, and checking to make sure that everything is running and working correctly. So it's a very high, what they would call a high touch business, but very much sales intensive, or service intensive, I should say. Really, our sales are, are we doing a good job for the customer, and can we kind of demonstrate numerically, economically that we're justifying our presence there? And so that's really what it's all about.
The company that you acquired, is the work there continuing, or are you relocating everything to Hutchinson?
They
or
have
part or none, or?
They have a small operation there. It's what we would call a blending operation. So they actually do buy the intermediates from others, and then turn around and blend those in their facility there. We'll probably actually convert that into more of a warehouse facility and move all that blending operation here to Kansas. And then actually there's probably a number of office, I'm going to call it back office support, that would be moving here as well.
Okay.
And that'll occur over a period of, I'm going to say maybe the first 6 to 9 months,
Right.
give or take.
Well, it appears to me that you and your family are somewhat of the economic development engines for Hutchinson and Reno County of
I don't know
late.
about that.
Yeah.
With this project and then the 30th Street project. And if I can ask you, maybe just enlighten us a little bit on the progress up on 30th Street, if you wouldn't. I know
You
this
bet.
doesn't
No,
pertain to it, but
happy to.
certainly it's all a part of
Yeah.
your investment in Hutchinson.
That is really fun. So Scooters is open.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the important
you know,
part.
big deal number one right there. That thing has created a lot of buzz. I actually went in because I started to panic a little bit, and I didn't see anything going on outside up there at Dillon's. I was like, "What's going on?" And so I went in and just kind of peeked in on what was going on. There's drywall going up in there, so they're really moving, and there's way more workers in there than what it looks like on the outside. And so I think we'll probably move the first tenant into the building in September 1 is kind of a hard deadline for them, so it's coming up fast. And there will definitely be construction going on after September 1 too, but we think our headquarters for the pharmaceutical business, Genzata, would be able to move in roughly in probably late October or November.
Terrific.
And so we have, I think it's 11 different suites in that facility, as well as some shared office space. And so we have, I believe, if there's 11, I think we have 8 or 9 of those already spoken for. So it's
Terrific.
It's been
That is
fantastic and great corner, obviously, and you know, a lot of excitement there. But we're excited to get to Hutch for sure.
Well, it is off subject, but he started it, so. Are you currently in the act of staffing the Genzata piece? I know you can't affect what your tenants are doing, but.
At the present time, we actually will have a pretty large number of folks that are moving their work over that's currently occurring in Sterling right now,
Right.
but we all live in Hutch anyway.
Sure.
So it's,
Yeah.
we
Okay.
just commuting less.
Yeah.
But plus there's a scooters there.
Did you say there was a scooters there?
No, the scooters here.
Scooters here, yes.
Well,
There's not one in Sterling.
They're on 30th.
On 30th, yes,
Yeah.
that's correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the big one.
Just catty corner from
Yeah.
the Hastings.
No, I know
And,
where it is. I was just,
They have breakfast sandwiches too.
Yeah.
you
Sorry,
have
getting
interest in
off
scooters?
topic. No, I don't. I'm just excited about it.
Yeah.
No financial interest. He has real interest.
I have a stomach interest. So actually moving all those jobs over, pretty much right away.
Wonderful.
And then we'll continue to operate the dietary supplement business in Sterling. That's where we have our manufacturing and facility and our greenhouses and so forth. So that's really probably pretty well suited to what's needed there in Sterling for that. So.
Okay, wonderful.
So I'm going to ask another question, totally unrelated to
Of course,
this
yeah.
agenda item, but you've got 2 projects in process here in Hutchinson. And typically, what has been your experience with the city of Hutchinson in terms of our planning department, our zoning, and so on, just to give us some feel for
You bet.
your experience in terms of welcoming you to Hutchinson?
Absolutely. I was actually going to address that.
Okay.
So I'm glad you asked. I know that sometimes, it's very difficult to attract jobs into Hutch, and it's very, sometimes the city frankly just doesn't get very good press in that regard. Our experience has been nothing short of fantastic. John and the team that he has been, wonderful to deal with, wonderful to work with. If we have questions, they answer them right away. It's been great, honestly, and if we can kind of help, and you mentioned it, John, I think a couple times. I think just we have these several projects going on, and I think our hope is that we can kind of help be a little bit of a catalyst for additional things to happen in Hutch, and we need it, and so maybe 50 years from now, this will pay some dividends, so or maybe less.
Hopefully, let's-
Hopefully less than 50.
Hopefully less than
Yeah,
50. That's right.
Thank you for that, sharing that.
Any other questions of Jason while we got him up here? or-
Yes.
Just want to thank you for your investment.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you all too.
You mentioned that you've got, I think you said 8 or 9 of your suites already committed. I'm curious, are we talking about relocations within the city? Are we talking about something new using some of those?
I
Can you share with
believe
that?
there's a handful of relocations, I know. And these are basically, firms that have kind of outgrown their current space. It's pretty tough, actually, to find some sizable office rental in Hutch, frankly. So this kind of, I think, filled a void that was there. There's some consolidation of, Hutch location might have a Hutch location as well as a Wichita location, so they're bringing the Wichita business in as well. And then I think there's a couple of new as well. So
Good, very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all you're
Great.
doing.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You bet.
Very good. Thank you, Jason.
You
bet.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Any questions of staff? I'll have that.
Yes, John, the benefit cost ratio study that was done, and maybe will we have someone here to talk to that more on the 6th, or?
Could, yeah, but, yeah, I mean, it's a requirement of the process, and
Right.
This particular study, the chamber, was the go-between between there and Wichita State, and obviously it showed a very positive impact on all taxing entities, probably much bigger than I've ever seen this
Really?
project. And the big reason, I think, if you look in their application, is the sales that really, we've had some numbers that aren't near this this good. I mean, it's really has an impact. You look at our investment, and John mentioned the property tax investment exemption that we're providing is a very small piece of the full benefit. So, I mean, we won't have anybody from Wichita State here to talk about
Okay.
it.
Well, you answered where I was
yeah,
going to go
yeah.
with raising that is just how does it compare? Is it a good benefit cost ratio?
Yeah,
how good? And you've
the most
addressed
recent
that.
one we had was Bold. That was a very small project, and it was like
It was.
1.25 or something like that. And you can look at those numbers and tell that it's a big return here based on our investment in it. So.
Okay, good.
Looking at a conservative estimate of $25 million in sales by year 5.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's to hoping the energy prices stay up.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Spoken by the cyclists.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not, maybe not as oil dependent as some, but yeah, I still drive.
Even if they don't, existing production needs to be treated with chemicals.
Sure.
And
True.
so
True.
Yeah.
prices staying up would enable them to grow faster, probably.
Absolutely. Is there a motion?
I would move to approve the letter of intent authorizing the mayor to sign and setting the required public hearing for August 6, 2019 at 9 a.m. in the city council chambers.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Daveline?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 7B, consider Brush Up Hutch 2019 policy amendment.
It worked.
Yes, it did. Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. Just for the record, my name is Ryan Vietlook, Director of Planning and Development here with the City of Hutchinson. Before you this morning, the Planning and Development Department's excited to kind of bring you an update, a little bit of the Brush Up Hutch, where we're at, and then a request from the Housing Commission to amend the Brush Up Hutch project to allow for investor-owned property eligibility. So, kind of give you guys a little bit of a history real quick of where Brush Up Hutch started and kind of where we're at. This is a great program. We hear all the time from people that this really does make a huge benefit in the neighborhood. So City Council approved creation of Brush Up Hutch back in 2011. So we're going on almost 8 years of this project. Since its inception, more than 100 homes have been painted. As you can see below, there's an example of kind of a before and after. It's a great visual thing for the neighborhoods, and it really has a very tangible effect and kind of a snowballing effect of, hey, a neighbor paints their house and either they come to the city for assistance or they do it themselves, and so it's been a great thing. And the great thing about it also is once that paint starts to deteriorate, it really can be a structural issue for the home. And so getting good fresh paint on there helps keep the wood or the materials from deteriorating quicker, so it helps keep our housing stock healthy longer. So it's a huge thing. So currently the Brush Up Hutch is eligible by owner occupied or land contract, so a resident applicant. You have two ways that you can qualify for Brush Up Hutch. There's either an income requirement, or the value of the home has to be less than $50,000. You cannot own more than one property as well. This is also anywhere throughout the city, not just our featured neighborhoods. So a lot of our programs are kind of targeted towards Southwest Bricktown and College Grove and all of our other featured neighborhoods. This one is anywhere within the city. So what the proposed program would actually do is that it would expand it from just owner-occupied and land contracts to renter-occupied as well. Still, you'd have the same income qualifications by either the homeowner or the tenant, or the value of the home is less than $50,000. The landlord restrictions, though, would be that you can only apply for one rental at a time. The landlord would have to agree to a 2-year rent freeze. And then rental properties are not eligible for volunteer assistance. So homeowner occupied, if you have mobility issues or things like that, the city works with some of our community action partners to help with doing volunteer assistance for helping to paint the actual home itself. The other one that you'll actually see in there, and that was added by the Housing Commission, is that we would cap the spending for the the landlords to 25% of the overall amount per year of the project, with it then being opened up to basically anybody after August 1st. So if we're not getting a ton of resident applicants, we would then expand it and reach out to some of our landlords. So the idea is we don't want all the landlords just to come in and take advantage of this program. We want to kind of make it as fair as possible, and it was intended more for resident applicants, but the Housing Commission does realize that we have a rather large stock of rental homes in the city, and this is just another way, once again, to kind of improve those homes a little bit more. So with that, staff does have a recommendation of accepting and approving the recommendation of the Housing Commission to allow for investor-owned properties to be eligible for the Brush Up Hutch paint program. And I'm available for any questions, and Amy Allison as well, who has worked with the Housing Commission, may be able to answer some questions as well.
Ryan, I had just a few questions. So can the application be initiated by either the tenant or the landlord?
That is correct, yes, it can.
Okay. And then how are we working through the Landlord Association to communicate this, or?
We will. We've got,
Okay.
That's the nice side effect of having the rental registration, is we have contact information for everybody, so we certainly can kind of send that information out to our landlords.
Great. I know that the Landlord Association has a new president or
Yes.
chairwoman in Jill Gumbel, so she might be a good contact to reach out to for this.
Absolutely, yeah, we'll definitely
But
do that.
really happy to see this. I know we were opposed to the idea at the beginning of this program, but with the number of rentals we have, I think it could make a positive difference in some of our neighborhoods, so.
I
thank
think
you.
it was summed up in there somewhere too, that the ultimate goal is to fill the
Exactly.
voids, get as many houses painted, and to make as many neighborhoods not only aesthetically look pleasing, but like you said, there's real value to having paint on your home to help prevent degradation and other
Absolutely.
things like that. Question with regards to the funding.
Mhm.
$6,000 is where it will remain?
Typically, the budget has been about $6,000. I think in 2020 it might have been slightly reduced down to $5,000.
Okay.
But we've got about 17 or 18,000 in there. We've been building it up over the last couple of years.
Okay.
That being said, we're trying to protect some of those funds because there's a big move possibly next spring. One of the faith-based organizations is bringing in some volunteers to help paint a large number of homes next spring, and so some of those might be able to take advantage of the brush up hutch. So we're trying to conserve some of those funds, but we have also been very active in getting the word out, and I think we're up to 17 or 18 applications so far this year,
great. Oh,
wonderful.
which
Good.
is a big increase over the last couple of
Great.
years, where it's only been 3 or 4. So
I think traditionally the limiting factor hasn't been the amount we've budgeted. It's been the amount of volunteers able to help
Right.
residents paint their homes. So I think we would all be open to looking at those numbers if we had an influx of requests.
I think it'd be a good problem to have if we
Yeah.
start spending this down. But
Right.
at this point, we've got a pretty decent cushion, and it's a small investment by the city, but it pays huge dividends. It really does.
Well, I think this is one of the strongest programs that we've got in terms of improvement of individual dwellings, improvement of neighborhoods, and I think the extension to landlords is a good one to further improve the housing stock, as you've mentioned, and also to the neighborhoods. What is the limit to the amount of dollars that can be attributed to one property?
Capped at 500, and then the Housing Commission can extend that up to 750 for special extenuating circumstances, a larger home or something like that. But it's capped at 500. That includes paint and then supplies as well. So
What do we find tends to be the average over?
about 400, yeah.
Okay, okay. So that would, if my math is right, that would be about 15 houses a year
Yep.
on that average price.
Yep, ideally.
So this year would maybe one of the first years in a while where you'll be dipping into the reserves, and the reserves are only there because the money had not been expended for a number of years, obviously.
Mhm.
Well, I would agree. It would be a good. As a matter of fact, I hope we have the problem of coming up to insufficient funds.
Mhm.
The bigger problem would be then you're convincing us to a lot more. But I think that it would be a good problem if we're really using the money
Yep.
in that fashion. We'd be seeing some pretty dramatic impact.
We're up for that challenge if it
Yeah.
comes
Right.
to that.
Any other questions, Ryan, staff, others?
I'd move to accept and approve the Housing Commission, to accept and approve the recommendation of the Housing Commission to allow applicable investor-owned properties to be eligible for the Brush Up Hutch Paint Program.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Pyrus de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep.
Yes. Next item. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Item 7C, consider Cow Creek channel improvements.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Jeff Peterson, Director of Engineering. This project is kind of one of the first ones as we move forward from our Stormwater Master Plan projects. It's kind of a building block moving forward to other projects as we try to improve some of the stormwater infrastructure in the city. So the Stormwater Master Plan was completed in 2017, and it identified a number of these big picture projects. The master plan is intended to have some projects completed over the next 25 to 50 years. They're not the small type projects that we can do just to improve just one smaller area. It's intended to benefit the whole community as a whole. So earlier this year, we began the process to hire a design consultant for this project. We requested requests for qualifications and then went through the interview process. The selection committee included John Daveline, John Deerdoff, Brian Clennon, and myself. And after going through the interviews, wood, environment, and infrastructure was selected. Then after that, a project scope and fee was developed. The budget costs for both the engineering and the construction for this project is approximately estimated at about $12 million. The proposed engineering fees, which are to be billed hourly, not to exceed a cost of $998,640, are provided in this agreement. So this is quite a large scope of items, which includes bridge design. It also includes working with a couple railroads for potential bridge work and conduits under the railroads, as well as coordination with working in proximity to a couple railroads in the South Plum Street area. It also includes permitting from the Corps of Engineers and the Kansas Department of Agriculture, public engagement, which I think will be important as we move forward, as well as potentially reducing some of the floodplain. The new floodplain maps are going to be coming into effect in approximately 1 year, and parts of these areas are actually going to be moved into the floodplain. So one of the intent is to minimize that going forward with this project. So as well as
Can you review that one more time? You said parts will be brought into the.
well, the new floodplain mapping with FEMA and the Kansas Department of Agriculture, there's portions of the community, which is this portion actually, South Plum Street, that do get included in the new floodplain.
That weren't formerly.
That were formerly not, and
Okay.
it wasn't mapped in those
Okay.
areas either, actually.
How much, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, would this alleviate or help maybe get some of them back out? Is that
There is the potential, and that's kind of the intent. I don't know how much, because we haven't gotten into the nuts and bolts of the design, of course, but that was one of the intents of putting this proposal out, and to try to impact that area by reducing the overall floodplain area. It will take a little bit of time, because we got to get through the project, but the intent in the long term is to not have that area of the community impacted as much by what the floodplain maps are going to be, or the.
When are those going into effect?
I would guess, and they have an idea on that too, it'd be approximately a year.
Okay.
So right
So
now,
those
they're not into
residents will
effect.
be forced to carry
If
flood
they have a
insurance?
federally backed
Home
mortgage.
loan, okay.
So,
Well, I guess we better get to work.
yeah.
Can we actually have impact on the maps that will be coming out within the
I
year?
believe that some of that
by
work,
some of what we might be doing?
some of that work would have to actually be, it would probably be after that.
That's kind of what I was thinking. So
The
it's really
timing-
going to,
The timing doesn't
Yeah.
match up.
But they could be revised.
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
Upon-
and they can speak more to that too.
Okay.
So we have a couple of their representatives here. So anyway, we do recommend that the approval of this proposed engineering services contract with Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions. And again, the cost was an hourly not to exceed $998,640. We do have representatives here today, Eric Brose and a couple others. I think Eric has a small presentation on this project, and we can ask questions now, or you can ask them afterwards.
I just had one more question.
Go
before
ahead.
they come up. The 998, is that pretty much is in line with the other 5 consultants?
Well,
Or,
we actually did
didn't do
requests
a
for
bid.
qualifications.
Oh, you did
And then we
you didn't do an
negotiate the price
RFP.
after we
Okay,
after we
gotcha.
select. When we
Got
do
you.
professional service agreements, we generally try to select the consultant that best fits the project.
Got you.
At the time, so.
So
And
it
it
was
was
an
it was
RFQ.
actually a pretty difficult selection process,
Yeah.
so. there was
Well,
a
I'd be
lot
interested
went
in
into it.
hearing from the individuals that traveled here as well. So if there's no
Well,
questions of Jeff.
Yeah.
Question for Jeff before. I know this is one piece, but you talked about the stormwater master plan. If the entire plan were to be, when the entire plan is done.
In 50
How many
years.
millions upon millions of dollars are we talking about to do the entire
Well,
plan?
if we did everything that was included in the plan as it is estimated now, actually, I think it's more than that. It's about $100 million.
Is it 100 million?
Okay.
Okay.
So,
And that would take just a year or two, wouldn't it?
well, yeah, more than that. I mean, the actual project work we're going to be doing here will be bonding portions of it. We have about a little over $1 million per year from the stormwater utility fund that can go directly to these types of projects. So
I wasn't trying to be facetious, but how many years, if everything just kind of kept rolling along, well, are we talking
Well-
a good 30 to 50 years, as you mentioned?
I would say yes.
Just to get the
But
whole
I
thing
think
done.
we'll see some incremental improvements as we go along.
Sure.
And that's the hope. So to kind of see, maybe after a couple of these projects, we can reassess and see what would best serve us going forward, so.
Well, and the city's evolving as well, so some of that would change if we have development in certain areas.
potentially
that
would. You're correct.
Create parking lots, that creates more runoff,
Yeah.
which creates more issues in different areas.
Yeah, and we're a pretty flat community, so it takes time for water to move through the community, so this one will actually help accommodate some more water down on the lower end, so we can continue having the stormwater conveyance come down toward and get out of the community, so.
So although it starts at sea and goes south, the impact is felt much further
As we
north.
move forward, it would be able to impact that and maybe incrementally begin to improve some of the localized flooding that we have in the community after some of these stormwater events, so.
So we probably won't feel any significant impact in some of the local street flooding. If I understand this, we might feel some?
Well, there'd probably be some localized areas closer to where the project's
To where it's
actually
actually happening. Yeah.
As we move some improvements more upstream, and that's the intent with this. This is the first of those.
But we
building
have to
blocks.
start
We gotta start
downstream.
Correct.
Yeah.
We can't do
It's
something
a
in the
funnel is
middle
what it
and
is.
not
We've
get-
got to increase the size of the funnel at the end.
Correct.
In order for the funneling from above upstream to move more out more rapidly.
Well, I think that's going to be a critical piece of communication to the public, because they're going to wonder why we aren't starting in the areas that experience
Well,
localized
that's right.
flooding.
Well, everything flows downhill and it gets to one place, and we got to get that
You got to have those pipes be a little
pipes
bigger.
to be able to, or the channel. What we're doing here
Yeah.
is expanding it, is to be able to move that water further out of the community. So.
There's also been some accusations that maybe we've been slow and we've been collecting the money but haven't done projects. But I'll remind you, we were waiting on a FEMA grant or an opportunity for a FEMA grant.
We did last year.
Right.
We did
So we kinda
submit
held
for
our breath
another
for a
project,
second.
was the second in Cleveland area, which in the long run would attach to this project,
Right.
or would be impacted by this project. Yeah, and we, last August or a little after that is when we found out that we weren't.
We're going to get it.
Going
So
to
once
get
we
that
put that to
project.
bed, then we identify the
And it was
most relevant.
actually a little bit bigger project in this one.
Right.
So it was about $15 million.
Well, and when you're dealing with multi-million-dollar projects and bringing in $1 million a year, you're going to have
It
to
takes time.
It takes a while.
accumulate.
So would point out, though, that there's been work done.
Oh, absolutely.
If you look in
Yes.
the budget message, like the Maple Street that was a $700,000 box culvert replacement that,
Right.
typically would have been bonded. We're
Right.
going to pay for that.
Was
Mike
and Molly, that's not right.
Mike and Molly.
Mike
That's
and
not-
Mona,
that's a
and also,
TV show. What's
Mike
the-
and Mona.
Mona
and then
something.
also areas out by the airport too. That community we did a
Chestnut.
bridge.
Kirby
project.
Street, yeah. So we've been doing some smaller projects that people maybe don't see, but based on the amount of money we're generating, that goes pretty quick.
There it is.
So-
There it is.
It does, so.
I might also ask, do we know what, of course we should know, but what is the fund balance in the stormwater?
I don't have that right at the moment. I think it's a couple $1 million, but I don't.
Couple?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
Somewhere around that.
2.5 to 3.
3? Thank you,
So
Angela.
we would have to bond 5?
We would bond, a
Oh.
portion of it. Portion of it will be going to the consultant fees, of course, so we won't have to bond that, but we would bond as we get into the projects, so.
we'll probably bond the entire construction on
Yeah,
this.
yeah. And this potentially is set up so we have different pieces to be bid at different times,
Right.
like just bridge projects, just grading projects, and just maybe utility locations
So
also.
timeline for this particular entire project?
Yeah, then I have that in the contract.
I
I believe the design will go through part of next year, and then I think bidding, it's toward the end on page 13. The preliminary
Oh, I
schedule
see the
has
schedule, yeah, 2021.
Yeah.
as early as August of next year.
About a year from now,
Well, some of the first pieces.
pieces
Because
will be bid.
I think we're going to try to bid some of those pieces separately so we can get the best bid for just the one type of work and kind of move it forward that way, so.
All right. Any other questions, Jeff, before we ask the folks from Wood to come up?
No, Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Did we grill you hard enough?
I know,
Is
I
that-
feel.
yeah.
That's fine. That's what you're supposed to do.
Right. I would invite those, if you have a presentation, we'd be more than happy to take a look at it.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. Eric Brose with Wood Environment. First of all, I'd like to say, you guys ought to be super proud of your city staff. I mean, Jeff does an awesome job, as with John, super professional, and we're super appreciative of the opportunity to work with such talented staff. Just want to give you a couple quick slides to introduce ourselves. Again, I'm Eric Brose. I'll be the project manager on the project. I have some history working in City of Hutch in past. Brad Johnson, he's the Kansas operations manager, and John Covey, he's the manager for our Wichita office. Again, we're called Wood. We just call Wood for short. We were formerly AMEC Foster Wheeler, huge company. We're a national company. We rank 6th as the top design firms. But right now we have 48 staff in Kansas, 12 in Wichita. We've been the preferred contractor for FEMA. So we kind of talked a little bit about the floodplain mapping and all that. We do that for the state of Missouri and for Kansas. So we have folks that work pretty much exclusively with FEMA, which we can leverage those relationships here for the city of Hutch as we get into the project. Again, I wanted to highlight that we're consultants first, and what I'm going to talk about a little bit is how this is such a collaborative process, right? The scope that we've got in your packet today, none of us have that crystal ball. We've said all along that we think the project's going to end up substantially different through public outreach, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I don't want to take a lot of your time, but as a background, Jeff covered this pretty well. There's about 4,000 acres that contribute to the drainage of Cow Creek. It's one of the most highly developed and highly impervious part of the city, and I assume you guys know what impervious is, where rainwater doesn't get into the ground, right? So it's all runoff. Again, as Jeff alluded to, this project is basically the foundation block for all your future other projects. Some of the projects that were talked about was Elm Street. There's actually a portion of Elm Street that we've included in this project, and that's to get through the railroad, which is kind of prohibiting some of the water from escaping and trying to get out of the downtown area. So we got Elm Street, Main Street, East 2nd Avenue, and Cleveland Street. Let's see. I want to just highlight, so the scope is kind of long-winded and we got some detail in there, but basically it's just 4 main things that we would like to work with city staff on to tackle this project. One of them is you've done a master plan, you've got some models. Again, that was at a 10,000-foot view of the entire system. So now we're going to dive into the weeds here a little bit. Must have hit play. Sorry. So we want to get into this area and really fine tune the model. So we're going to develop some alternatives to this project that's going to be value to the city through enhanced modeling. Again, second step is throughout the whole process of this project, we want to actively engage the stakeholders throughout the entire life cycle. And then once we finish those 2, we'll develop the scope of the project, and then losing my slides here. And then the final piece would be to develop the bid documents for construction. So as we get into the enhanced modeling portion of the project and develop these alternatives, of course, we're going to take the master plan. We've already begun to do some of this up front for the interview and working with city staff. We've looked at the master plan. We immediately see some advantages to our approach and thinking that we can reduce the cost that was presented in that master plan. The city has put out some historical, had put out some flow monitors. We want to use NextRad data, and you've had a lot of recent events in May. So now we can take these models and we can make them actually simulate what's actually happening in your system. So that's one of the approaches to doing that. And I apologize for these slides. It's probably on animation. Sorry, Jeff.
I don't know where you're at.
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
And from the enhanced modeling and calibrating this, we'd like to work with city staff, and that's where we begin the public outreach. We look at cost alternatives and things to reduce the floodplain, to try to pull people out of the floodplain that we know are going to get into that. The 4 C's, that's one of the things as a consultant that we really stress. Collaboration, or coordination, collaboration, communication, and consensus. In our scope, we've got several meetings with workshops with the city commission. We want to meet with the parks department. Regulatory, we're going to have to deal with the Corps of Engineers, Division of Water Resources, utilities that are in the way. We're going to have to work with the utility companies. And one of the biggies here is the railroads. We're surrounded on all sides of this with railroads, BNSF, K&O, and a private spur line for Cargill. And again, we're trying to work with KDA on some funding opportunities for some of this project. Let's see. Again, this is kind of a snapshot from the master plan. That's like this grandiose scope, but like I mentioned before, that's what we've put an estimated not to exceed hourly cost to, was this grandiose scope. We are confident that it's not going to look exactly like this when we're finished. As we get into the details, we collaborate with the public, we deal with the railroads, we work with city staff, we work with the Parks Department, the Stormwater Committee. This is going to look probably a lot different than it looks in the exhibit right now. The last step, once we've identified what the project is going to look like through the collaboration process, then we want to begin developing these construction documents. And as Jeff alluded to, we've broken into several phases. We visit with city staff. We certainly want to take advantage of any local contractors you have. We're big on trying to keep Hutchinson's dollars here locally. So by doing a site clearing and demolition package, you certainly have contractors right here in town capable of doing that. Utilities, if we break that into a bid package, there's locals right here that could probably dive in on that work. Bridge modifications, maybe more of a specialty contractor, but we've separated that. Again, we don't want to put it into all one big contract because they mark up their subs. So what we've got in our scope is to break it up. And then finally, the stormwater channel improvements, which is going to be a lot of earthwork. That also provides some opportunities for public amenities. Showed a little graphic here. We've worked on a lot of similar projects like this, and at the end of the day, we make a lot of improvements. But how does the public, really benefit? That's something we'll vet out through this process. I think our exhibit kind of showed a hike bike trail that would get from Elmdale Park down to Severance towards the dog park. But we want to keep this in line with your hike bike master trail plan and some of your parks plans. You guys have great plans that we're going through and we're looking at now, and we think if you're going to spend these kind of dollars, what kind of enhancements can we do along the way that improves this community? So again, some of the benefits, well, these are the key benefits, was at the end of the project, we obviously want to reduce flood risk and insurance burden on the community throughout this area. This project, again, serves as the foundation block. We want to enhance community climate resiliency. I threw that in there because in our company, that's kind of a big buzzword with, the climate change, and I'm not a climate specialist. But what we do know is that some of these events are more intense, more localized. And so whatever we do, the dollar spent here, we want to spend wisely, that it's able to handle some changes and fluctuations in the climate. Improve the operations and maintenance of the channel. For city staff or budgets, we don't want to have something that's going to be expensive to maintain. So at the end of the day, we'd like this project to be cheaper to maintain than what you have now. Improve water quality in the environment. That's through removing suspended solids, through detention. Some people call it green infrastructure, but basically the final water that enters the river is probably going to be a lot cleaner than it is today at the end of this project. And then if there's opportunity to improve the amenities, the aesthetics of the area, and the quality of life in the area. We certainly want to take advantage of that throughout the life of this project through the public outreach. And I've talked long enough. I guess we'll open it up for questions. You guys had some very good questions earlier, and if there's any other questions, I've got some folks here to help too.
Jeff, a question. All right, we're a year out from now, and you've done the bid documents, and the scope and the design of the project are essentially completed and ready to be bid.
Actually, not yet. They'll get started after this contract goes into place. So.
Right.
But go ahead.
No, I understand that.
Oh, okay.
Where I'm going with all of this is that I'm particularly interested in knowing, once the project is let and during construction, will you all still be engaged as part of your contract with the city as advisors to the city on the construction phase of it, or how does that work?
At this point, that portion wasn't included because we don't really know the final project portion. So that would be if there's like construction observation or more professional dealings with this project, that would be a separate agreement moving forward.
There were several things that it said negotiated later.
Right, and that's one
Yeah,
of them.
that's the type of thing, yeah.
But that'll be a critical part of the project, is that
Well,
we're
it
on
sure
top
seems to
of
be a
it.
critical
Yeah.
part of the
Yeah.
It
plan
is.
to
Yeah,
With a lot of projects.
It is, but
maintain continuity here.
yeah.
Right, and we discussed that, we'd bring an amendment to this at a later date for that portion, when we kind of know the final scopes of everything and we can develop a good fee structure for that, so.
Related, as part of the overall project, you have that in mind as far as some of the costs that are part of that 12 million.
Right.
Yeah.
Eric, a question on the public engagement piece. You mentioned that the project could look somewhat different based on that. The actual route wouldn't be different, would it? It would just be,
Sure.
what exactly could change as a result of the public engagement?
So there's some opportunities to maybe not expand the bridges as we get into the detailed modeling. So again, the master plan said these 4 bridge structures are going to be widened to this width for conveyance. We don't necessarily think that is all going to happen. We think maybe 1 or 2 potentially with some side detention facilities could eliminate us having to do something on the other 2 bridges.
I see what you're saying.
So we just kind of looked at what the master plan, which was very conservative, and that's part of the 12 million. It's like these 4 bridges are going to get widened. So in our review, we think there's potential savings there. But for scoping purposes, at this point in the game, and that kind of falls along with your question, we did discuss going ahead and trying to use our crystal ball and estimate what's going to be construction and provide the construction observation and administration hourly estimate. But at this point, we feel like it'd be better to come back to the commission and say, okay, here's what's really going to be built, and we can
Yeah.
right size that piece of the contract, at a later date.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
With regards to those that are potentially going to be impacted by the revision on the flood maps, and then the work that we hope to do to maybe get some of them back out, again, no crystal balls, will those individuals have to get their own site elevation certificates, or will you be able to, through
Well,
your process?
I would like to invite John up to visit a little bit about that, but what I do know is that once we get through design on this and we get to the point where we understand the project and the benefits of that project, we can submit a conditional letter of map revision to FEMA that looks at that and says, okay, if you build this, then we will just take all these folks out.
Oh, great.
If you build it per
Okay.
plan. So once we get to a point in design that we can submit that to FEMA and get their approval on it, even though it's not built yet,
We'll know
we
the
just have
direct
to
impact.
certify that those improvements have been put into place and then they're automatically taken out.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eric touched on it. My name's John Covey, by the way. I'm the Wichita branch manager. Exactly as he described. Once we know what the project is, we have some design concepts drawn up, then we can file what they call a CLOMAR, conditional letter of map revision, which will get FEMA's preliminary acceptance of the project to change the maps as they would be effective at that time. And then therefore, once that's done and it's constructed, we would follow that with a letter of map revision, which would physically change the maps, and then your community can benefit from the flood reduction from an insurance requirement standpoint at that point in time.
And they don't individually have to exempt themselves or whatever. You
Not,
would take care of that.
not necessarily. It's going to depend on how the project turns out. If we physically change the maps where they get shrunken down to the channel, then all those areas that are in the floodplain would actually be out, and therefore they would not require any sort of survey done or a letter of map amendment at that time.
So the designs will be completed by first quarter next year?
I believe that's correct. I think
And
portions of them would be.
At that point, is that where in the timeline the letter requesting revision would be
Ideally,
submitted?
yeah. So once we have the design plans drawn up, we can submit that conditional letter of map revision, which requirement for that would be an application to FEMA, including the plan sets that are going to reduce that elevations and create those new maps, and the modeling associated with that. So ideally, by that time in the contract that we have there, we would have a lot of that already developed, and we could submit that to FEMA.
So the timing might work rather well for those individuals.
I mean, obviously, our goal would be to expedite it as quickly as possible so that your community could benefit quicker than later due to that. So. But again, there's a lot of unknowns here, and so we want to nail that down as quickly as we can so that we can get to that point faster.
Great. Thank you.
I would assume during the public engagement piece too, you're going to hear from a lot of folks that could be impacted that they don't want to be in the floodplain.
Yeah,
So make a valid effort
absolutely.
to keep them out.
From a public side of things, I think there's a lot of people that are going to be very interested in that, not just on the amenity side, the trail side, which all that could look a lot different.
Yeah, for sure.
I think the flood risk side will be a primary component of that. And the challenge with this is not just changing that now, but also looking to your future and making sure that we're accommodating that, and your other future citizens will also benefit from it. So,
great, thank you.
And I guess that adds to whoever wants to answer, but you don't want to necessarily overbuild it, but to a certain extent you do want to overbuild it, don't you, with an eye to the future? We might need to accommodate more water flow or things like that.
Part of this
is probably not the right word.
Well, no, that's a little bit of it.
Yeah.
Part of this will give us a few alternatives, and there'll be a cost associated with the construction of those alternatives, and that's something that we'll have to kind of weigh and bring back to you guys to see if, okay, is it worth us building it to this for this money, or is it better to do it this way at this time? So trying to right size it per se for what available funds and what we want to put toward these projects. So.
Do you measure that in the terminology of, I can't even think of the wording, where it's a 10-year event, a 5-year, 20?
It can be, and I think, I believe some of that information will be put together as they kind of get into their modeling events, and then the selection of what alternatives, like if we're going to do work on these 3 bridges and these items along that corridor, or make the channel this wide, those things can be impacted, and it can impact the final cost of the project construction. So I think there will be the opportunity to at least review those per se as a whatever event, a 10-year event or a 100-year event as we move into this. So.
Very good. Any additional questions?
I just wanted to comment. And there's loads of good stuff just in terms of the stormwater drainage and the floodplain maps that we've talked about. And it's probably a sliver, but I'm really pleased that one of the elements that you identify is amenities and aesthetics. We could certainly improve our stormwater drainage and cut a ditch through and put the bridges back up. And that's what we'd have, our concrete bridges in a ditch. But to incorporate the opportunity to have it looking better than it does today, I'm just really pleased with that part of it. So good to see that.
I would move to approve the proposed design consultant contract with Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $998,640 and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second?
It has been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes?
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 7D, consider downtown pocket park bid results.
Say that again 3 times rapidly.
Good morning, Justin Combs, Director of Parks and Facilities. This item is for the bid results of the Pocket Park downtown. Just a little bit of background. This is the site. 15 East First is the address, directly next to Hutchinson. So the red wall in the building on the right side of the photograph is Hutchinson. We did demolish the building in November of last year that was on the site. So this is looking up from First Street, and then just one more view of the building.
Excuse me.
Or the empty site, I guess. So this is a little bit here of what the park will look like. Let me get my pointer. So really, I keep saying the word park, but really we should be using the word plaza as a much more descriptive word for the site. So what we're seeing here is a concrete plaza. So the squares you're seeing are just saw cut concrete to kind of create just kind of some shapes in the flat work, just kind of break up the site a little bit. And we have these planter boxes here. They're fairly large, so they're 10 by 10. So each one of these squares is 5 by 5. So that makes a planter's box is 10 by 10. And then we have a ground level planter box here. And then this planter box here is tall. This one's a little bit shorter. And then opposite here, this is a tall one and this is a short one. And then this is a stage. Here the stage is elevated, I think 5 or 6 inches above the rest of the plaza. And then we have ADA ramps up either side of the stage, and then this is just some landscaping to kind of frame the stage. Another thing I want to point out is you don't see really any seating on the site. That's done intentionally. One is we'll do flexible seating for events, so things that you can pick up and move for events. But on an everyday basis, these planter boxes are actually all seat walls. So the top of the wall is 20 inches, which is the height of a bench. And they're a foot wide. So it's going to feel like a bench.
Okay.
So when you look at it from that perspective, there really is a lot of seating here. And also with Hutchinson being next door, we've already talked about experimenting with some flexible seating that people can move, and then maybe at the end of the day they have a shed they can put it in so it doesn't walk away at the end of the day. So the bottom image then would be looking at the wall of Hutchinson. So if we go back, or if you go back to those original photos, we have this brick that's exposed in this section of the wall. That brick does have to be covered. It's not exterior grade brick, so we will do basically a block here, new block wall, completely separate of Hutchinson, and then it will have a brick fascia, and then we have these 3 murals basically is what the intent for them. So there'll be block behind it, and then it'll be skim coat, so it'll be nice and smooth. And then this section of the wall is existing. You'll get a fresh coat of paint. And then they're hard to see. These are planter boxes, so we can kind of create a green wall effect. And then there's 5 panels that we're proposing that could be a metal panel that's offset several inches from the wall and have something decorative or artistic cut into that metal panel. We do for this mural location here, so this is directly behind the stage. So just for reference, there's the stage, and then you can kind of see it here. The 1% for public art is working with a muralist for a mural for the center one. The other 2 right now will most likely just be painted a coordinating color unless somebody steps up with some additional funding for murals there. We also have a downtown business who's very interested in doing these metal panels. They're not designed or anything. We've kind of been talking what that would cost and what that would look like. And there is a local business that's very interested in helping in that project. So that's the site. I will point out this section right in here, right adjacent to the alley. The reason we've set those planter boxes off a little bit is for special events. We can have a food truck or another vendor or something park in this area and then still not block the alley. So for our special event use, we kind of have built in some space for vendors. And then on On the bid tab, you'll notice there's 6-inch concrete and 4-inch concrete. So this is where that 6-inch concrete is going. We're thickening that for vendor parking. So here is the bid tab. Had three vendors. Prairie Land Works from McPherson, Ward Davis from Hutch, and A&A from Hutch. As you can see, Ward Davis is the low bid. I am recommending to take all the alternates. The reason we threw the alternates in was just to be sure we get this project done under budget. The budget is $200,000 for the construction piece. Ward Davis is just under that amount. Also do want to point out we've had a long history with Ward Davis Builders. Let's see, recently the Fun Valley, exterior renovation, they did windows at Shattuck Park for us, Orchard Park Phase 4B, and I'm sure there's more. I'm sure I'm missing several. So we have a long history with Ward Davis. Very confident in their ability to do this project. So. The other thing I do want to bring up a little bit, I guess, since we're here, is the naming of the plaza. In order to officially name the plaza, we will have to create a city ordinance. All our parks are defined and named in a city ordinance. So that will be a separate action. I know we've had the conversation about Chester Lewis Plaza, and if that's the direction people are comfortable with, or the council is comfortable with, we can definitely bring that at a future meeting. So something else I just want to throw in that conversation, so we have some direction on how to proceed with naming. So with that, I will stand for questions, but like I said, I do recommend award to Ward Davis Builders for $194,302.50.
Question for you on the bid tab. Item 4 has to do with electrical.
Yes.
What electrical? What are we lighting? What
Lighting.
is it?
Yeah.
Is
So
that lighting?
Yep. So there will be lighting along this wall, actually all the way across.
Okay.
Just provide one, just security, just so you can see, also to highlight some of the artwork that's going to be on there.
Will there also be some receptacles, plugins, or no?
There'll be some receptacles for the stage, as well as we're going to put conduits in to each one of these planter boxes. So at a later point in time, we have a pathway to pull wire and put receptacles into those. And that pathway will go all the way to the outlet, or the box will be located, be hidden in this old chimney stack from the old building.
Need to work on getting some public Wi-Fi in that plaza.
Hutch Rec has committed to lighting the whole site up with public Wi-Fi.
Great.
Since
Okay.
they're right next
Good,
to it.
yeah.
And if that doesn't work, we're line of sight from one of our towers, so I'm sure our IT folks could do that as well. But Hutch Rec has stepped up and volunteered to do that.
Did you hear that, Todd?
And just to touch on your comment about the naming, I, for one, would be in favor of Chester Lewis Plaza if there's a.
Well, that's right. There was obviously conversation with the Avenue A Park, and obviously Avenue A would not be an option for this park. So the only other two alternatives, and I think one was dismissed possibly because it has to be a historical
The Smallville?
individual or something like that, which would only leave one option potentially, if I heard that correctly. So if that's the case, then I would be.
Just go through the process.
Yeah. Well, or we can reopen the conversation.
The lighting
Looks
that
good.
was asked about, Justin, I assume it'll be a good traffic way from our parking to, say, the Fox or to First Street there in terms of the nighttime lighting.
The park really serves, the plaza really serves kind of two purposes. One, as a plaza, as a meeting spot, as well as kind of a corridor from the parking lot located back here behind Hutch Rec and Pools Plus, then to the Fox Theater directly across the street. So the idea is we have created kind of this pathway through this space, and then we'll light that up. So now it's inviting for you to walk through this space as you park in that parking lot behind. Yep.
And safe.
Justin, the paved alley that parallels the plaza there, what condition is it in, and is it acceptable?
It's not too bad. It's got a few places that we compared to some of them. That section drains well. We don't have a lot of standing water there. there's some of the pavement's actually fairly new. We've had some utilities that have been replaced in that area, so.
So as folks journey from the Fox Theater, say, to that south parking lot, as an example, will they typically walk in the alleyway or in the plaza? Or
They do now. The hope is they'll walk
The
through
hope,
the plaza.
yeah, walk in the plaza.
that would be the hope. They would
Yeah,
walk in
yeah,
the
because
plaza.
it'll be well lit. It'll be inviting. That's where
Be a
that's
better
part of the
surface.
design is to get people
Yeah.
to move through the plaza as opposed to walking the alley.
Walking into the alley.
And then you're greeted by another alley at the, what would be the south end?
Yeah, right in here. yeah.
Remind me, isn't there a wall there, or is there a step, or?
There is a planter box that kind of divides the alley, and we will cut a few curb cuts in there. It's not very wide. It's 5 or 6 feet. That's something we'll do in-house and just create a walkway through that.
Okay.
Not to add to the expense, but a ramp, I don't know if that's necessary or not, ADA requirements.
Yeah, because right now the only ADA access across that is up closer to a Hutch Rec. There's a sidewalk across it. So just to make it more convenient, we can put one in more in line with the park here.
Right. Because some of us don't get around as quick as we used to, isn't that right?
You're
Nancy?
right, yeah, I was gonna say, but be sure you put a railing.
There you go. Very good. Any other questions of staff or the contractor is in the audience? If anybody has any questions.
And maybe it's a question for Ward, but what's the time frame anticipated in
The
this?
contract has 60 days, working days, which is 3 months. So the hope is November 1st, I believe, was the date that's in the contract.
Super.
Good.
Okay.
Good.
Your sons are so patient and well-behaved.
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
Doesn't hurt the cause.
That's okay.
Very good. Any other questions, or is there a motion?
I'd move to approve the contract with Ward Davis Builders for the construction of a downtown pocket plaza in the amount of $194,302.50 and authorize the mayor to sign.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dayblind?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 7E, consider aerial spraying for mosquitoes.
Paul Brown, City Attorney. You may wonder why I'm involved with mosquitoes. I was invited by the Reno County Councilor to join the teleconference with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. This was their proposal to have spraying in Reno County selected portions because we have a surveillance program and the number of Culex mosquitoes has increased greatly, which raises a risk for West Nile and encephalitis. They are proposing to spray at their cost. They have asked for cities to approve this and have told us they're going to send us a memorandum of understanding, which I haven't seen yet, but they were wanting us to move on this as soon as possible. They're having Reno County basically head up this project. With us today is Megan Hammersmith with the Reno County Health Department. I've supplied you with the information that was given to me in advance about what the purpose of the program, the chemicals being used, the safety of those chemicals, and basically how it's to be applied. You've also seen there's a map in there that shows the areas that they want to treat, and that's kind of where we are at this point. And I'll invite Megan up to the podium so that you can ask any additional questions you might have.
Paul,
Morning, Megan.
I know that our policy has changed in the last few years on aerial spraying, precisely because we felt it wasn't very effective. So
We didn't really have aerial spraying. We had the units that drove down the street.
Okay, so this
Oh, I
really
see.
is
So this-
airplanes.
This would be an airplane.
Oh, okay.
so it's a little bit different.
Yeah,
Yes.
a lot different, actually.
The ones going down the street, they just treat our front yards.
Yeah.
But this aerial spraying will cover the city.
So basically like a crop duster.
Yes.
Same product?
Different.
No.
No.
Okay, that's what I thought. Very
You mean
good.
same mosquito product?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's pretty much the same.
Okay, so the product we had used for
He was talking about a crop duster.
treating,
Oh,
Yeah, no, I
treating
wasn't
mosquitoes is the
meaning,
same product that is
fertilizer.
being proposed here?
So Megan,
Same
is
aerial spray, I guess, was the question.
NALED, what is this called?
Yes, good morning, Megan Hammersmith,
Please.
Marion County. Yes, we are proposing aerial spraying, and Jade, you are correct. This is the least effective way to treat mosquitoes. However, the mosquito numbers over the last year, because of flooding, have been so great that the CDC is now involved, and they are recommending that we do some type of aerial spraying just to knock down the population of Culex mosquitoes. And then it really is a collaboration of residents and cities, county, to put mosquito dunks out in standing water, drain their standing waters, and then we're hoping that with the mosquito spraying, this will help eliminate some of those mosquitoes, and then with dunks out, we can start beginning to see a lesser number of Culex mosquitoes.
Well, we had some supplemental information in our packet about, questions regarding health impacts, et cetera. Can you speak a little bit to that? I was contacted by a few people who are concerned about these chemicals being in the air and their impact on both humans and animals.
Absolutely. The material that, or the material that's being used is the same material that would be used if it were being sprayed out of a truck or anything else. This company is from, I believe it's from Mississippi. They're from out of state. They spray Texas and some of the coastline areas, so they are professionals in doing this. The product is, there are no health effects to humans, animals, wildlife, or anything. It's such a small amount. I believe it's 2 tablespoons per acre that is let out of the airplane or out of the aircraft as it comes through. And we felt like this was the most quickest and effective way for this to happen.
And upon approval, when would this be done?
Thursday evening.
Thursday evening?
This week, wow.
Okay.
This week.
So it's coming quickly, okay. So
That's
like,
not fast enough.
I'm sorry.
like
8
what
o'clock,
time?
8 o'clock,
Yeah.
midnight?
The
what?
spraying will happen between, it has to be about 45 minutes before dawn, so about 8:45, and it will end approximately around between 8 and 2 a.m.
Now, that's
So-
the entire county spraying
Well,
process,
it will be
or-
all the municipalities.
Or the municipalities, yes.
As they opt in, yes. We have, we're only waiting on the city of Hutchinson and Abbeville at this point in time, and I will get the MOU to you. I'm sorry you haven't received that.
Actually, I received it. I thought he had. So
Okay, good.
we'll print it and get it signed, assuming it's approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think you covered it, but I want to make sure I heard it right. This, again, kills adult mosquitoes. It does nothing to the larvae or...
It will kill adult Culex mosquitoes. Well, it'll kill adult mosquitoes.
Okay.
And the Culex are the ones that transmit. They're the female mosquitoes, and they're the ones that transmit West Nile, dengue.
Okay.
Very good.
I don't want to belabor it, but like Jade, I'd had a couple of folks contact and just raise concerns. One was even a biologist and had concerns about the effectiveness. And I think, if I'm understanding, one of the effective issue is really the difference between spraying it from the ground, a truck, versus having it dispersed overhead from the air. And that it's not a cure-all, but it certainly has a much more effective impact.
Right now, yes, and it's such a large area, and it would be for the funding that they have, and we felt like it was the most cost-effective to be able to do this aerial-wide, as opposed to going out with a truck. I mean, this company will also, we were really not given the option whether we wanted to do truck or aerial because of the numbers of mosquitoes. They wanted to knock down the population as quickly as possible to prevent transmission of disease.
How soon will we have some feedback in terms of the count and the traps that are out in the county and around?
We trap once a week. We set the traps out on Tuesday, so they'll be going out tonight, and then we collect them on Wednesday mornings. And so those numbers get sent to KDHE and to the Kansas Biological Survey. Then they identify the mosquitoes, and then from there they're sent off to a lab in Nebraska for further testing for West Nile. So that takes about a week's time to get that information back, so a week's lag time. So next week we'll be trapping again, and we'll see those numbers come back.
So the results of these various tests and labs that
About 2 weeks out for the actual
from
numbers.
now,
Yes.
or 2 weeks from the spraying.
Sure.
Are there other Kansas counties and cities that are involved in this?
No.
Really?
Reno County is the only one right now. I mean, obviously mosquitoes are everywhere right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Reno County has had a significant amount of flooding, which is why we have seen such an increase in numbers of mosquitoes.
see.
And this is the first time that obviously Hutchinson and Reno County has engaged in aerial spraying, and KDHE, this is their first time of aerial spraying as well.
Isn't it also related that we had a death some years back, and so we became a collection point, and so there's the ability to know what we've got. We're not the only county in Kansas, though, that has a collection process, are we?
No, there are 3 or 4 other counties that also do collection sites. I believe Sedgwick and Johnson County are also 2 of the additional ones in addition to Reno County, and you are correct. I think it was maybe 3 to 5 years ago, there was a death by West Nile in the western part of Reno County, which is why we were picked to be a surveillance site.
Okay.
Is Wichita, Sedgwick or Johnson County looking at this aerial process?
As far as I know, no, but I can only speak to what's happening in Reno County.
Sure, okay.
The, again, just to understand how it works, it says the droplets float in the air and kill adult mosquitoes on contact. So they have to be out and about. It has to land upon them or whatever.
Yes and no, yes. They will kill the mosquitoes that are out and about, but I do believe that there's an agitator in this product so that if there's a mosquito that's sleeping on a tree or somewhere out, sleeping somewhere, hiding in their spots, then it will encourage them to come out and then also hopefully take care of that population as well.
And then once it hits the ground or water or whatever, it begins the process of becoming inert. Is that accurate?
Yes, it dissipates.
Okay.
Yes, so it is safe. I mean, it's not as if people can't be out while it's happening. That would just be up to personal preference, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the planned dissemination of information to the public that spraying is happening
Sure.
Thursday and it's happening these hours, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, obviously we'll use media, and we're also hoping to use Everbridge right now as the call system. It's the notification system that the county uses for emergencies and other events. So we're having a meeting this afternoon or tomorrow morning to decide where in the municipalities we need to draw our lines to make those phone calls. And those phone calls will probably happen, I believe, on Thursday, probably Thursday morning, early Thursday afternoon.
And the planned period of spraying time again is?
8 to 2 a.m., 8 p.m. to
8
2
p.m.
a.m.
on Thursday until 2 a.m. Friday morning.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. You ready for a motion?
Yeah, if there's no more conversation or questions of Megan or others.
Okay, I will move to approve a memorandum of understanding with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment for the aerial spraying of mosquitoes over the city of Hutchinson and authorize the mayor to sign, subject to the review of the memorandum of understanding by the city attorney.
Second.
I'll second.
Linda, you got a second, Dave?
I do.
Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Megan. It's been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep.
Yes. Next item.
Item 8, report of city officials.
Okay, Nancy, you've been
I
out of
have,
pocket for
I
a
have
second.
nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Okay, John?
Nothing.
Steve?
Just a quick one. A fun thing starts this Thursday at the Flag Family Community Theater, Freaky Friday. Mother and daughter change personalities, and you can imagine what might come out of that. So that happens this week, Thursday through Friday, and also next week, Thursday through Friday. So come out and enjoy some fun situations.
Very good. Okay.
I just wanted to remind everyone in that same vein that Third Thursday is this Thursday, 5:30 to 8-ish in downtown Hutchinson. And there will be an event called Arts and Eats at the Hutchinson Art Center. So that's about 5th and Washington, I believe. They'll have food trucks and artwork out there, fun for the whole family. So I encourage you to take advantage of that. And also the Sculpture Walk Recognition event is at the Art Center this Thursday as well. So have fun with that.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Lots happening.
In the same vein, we talked about an hour and a half ago, but the emancipation activities as well. So there is a lot going on in the upcoming weeks. That's all I had, City Manager, as you take your drink.
A couple quick things. In the weekly report, I talked to you about the potential traffic issue at 30th and Lucille, and that's come to our attention. Due to the closure of the bridge at 43rd, USD 313, last year when that bridge was closed at a period of time, they were concerned about the traffic because all the bus traffic then diverts from there, all of it down 30th, making that entrance into Lucille, into the school. And there's not much stacking room there. Some of you that live in that area may know what that traffic looks like that in the morning. And so there's been a question, obviously, the city, what are we going to do? And it becomes our issue. And so, we've had some internal discussions about whether we should look at a temporary signal there. And I don't want to head down that path unless that's something the council's looking for. And to me, it would be temporary only. It would only be during when that bridge is open back up, because then you're talking about a much more expensive project, and I'm not sure the traffic counts warrant a fully energized signalization there, but maybe during this interim. We did something like this years ago when the bypass or new K61 was being built, and 56 was closed, so there's a lot of traffic coming down 43rd. And so we did a temporary signal there at 43rd Halstead that I think seemed to work out pretty well. But again, it was only temporary during that process. But
This is similar to what we do on Main Street for the Kansas State Fair.
yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be wood poles. Sorry, John.
Start with that.
with lights, strung across, and we're going to probably spend a little money to get it. Have a traffic engineer look at it, make sure because. Want to make sure it's right. There's going to probably be some dedication turning lane or turning signalization, those kind of things. And we're looking at doing that work in-house. And I don't have a cost figure, although I know we're, probably going to be under 20, but probably in that area. And that's just on materials. That doesn't count the time we put in to build it.
What are we looking at timeline if we do this?
Well, the goal was to get it up before school. That was unfortunately that we just find out about this, and school starts in probably a month.
August 15th, yeah.
Well, I can tell you, living in that area, it's pretty bad. It's pretty backed up. I just take Inverness. I don't even try to go up Lucille, and I think that's what our entire neighborhood has to do. But yeah, you're backed up well onto 30th Street now if you are trying to approach north during school time or as it lets out. So what's going to happen is, because it's much worse now, is it's going to go west on 30th, that traffic line. Does that make sense? As people go to pick up their children?
Yeah, oh yeah. Unless we send them down Spyglass. Just send them. But you're, part of the conversation with Superintendent Mike Burblanger too is that they're also going to look at themselves as how they might be able to eliminate the congestion. One of those ideas was, maybe a bus, those who ride a bus get out a little bit early. That I don't know how that school does that, but that's one of the things that he and I talked about, that traffic light just isn't going to fix everything that maybe they've got, and just the way they drop kids off and the stacking, there's not much room there. And so I think this is probably a way to try to alleviate some and my issue is I don't want to wait until, the first week of school and then get phone calls as to why this is so bad and, what have we done? So.
What is the ETA on the bridge?
18 months.
18 months.
Okay. Yeah.
So 2 school years.
Now you can ride a bike over it now, though. So.
Yeah, exactly. See? Yeah. Didn't hinder me a bit.
So if we're going to install this ourselves, can we make the ask of 313 School District to pay half of this, half the cost?
I've made that request, not a specific number, but I'm glad you brought that up, is that would they consider contributing to this?
Cost share?
Yeah. Haven't
I would say
heard back,
50%.
but I would hope that would be the case.
That makes sense.
That's what we did the Cosmosphere
Yeah.
when we put up that signal. I think that's a fair ask.
Does the county have any play in this thing, or, I mean, they don't, huh? Okay.
If it were
Or
not
the
18
township.
months, I would suggest detour signs. You said Inverness is an option. I'm sure there's not folks that want all the traffic through the
No.
Yeah.
streets, but 18 months, that's
Yeah,
That's
it,
a long
it,
time.
the more we thought about it, I thought about it. I mean, at one point, it's like, well, it's going to become our issue. And we might as well try to get out in front of it and try to at least alleviate some of the concern. The problem with that intersection too is that, in the summer, or in non-busy times, we don't want that light continuing to
Yeah.
switch. So people are sitting on 30th and there's nobody.
Right.
And so it's going to be an education piece that,
Sure.
for the most part, going east and west
East
on
and
30th,
west.
it's green.
Yeah.
But during school, it's going to not be green at times. And so Jeff's here. I'm not sure how we're going to design that, but it'll probably be a vehicle actuated kind of thing. I'm not sure how. There'll be some sophistication in that part of it, so.
You make a point, and Jeff, it sounds like you got an answer. It's only problematic 2 times during the day, 8
Yeah,
o'clock
right.
and 3 o'clock, or roughly thereabouts.
Yeah, we're planning on it's actuated from the side streets, but we're also putting in a loop actually on 30th Avenue, so when people go into that turn lane, at least it knows people are there, so people can make the turning movement up Lucille, if you're traveling east.
Okay.
Yeah, traveling east, so.
Yeah.
There is no turn lane.
No, there is a turn
There is a
lane.
turn lane to go
There
north.
is, it's
Yeah.
short.
West,
If you're
though?
on west, it's just a left turn.
I know
right
there's
turn
another street there. It's not as
There's
traveled
not,
as
it's not as big a deal because you can naturally
Yeah.
turn
Yeah.
to the right there.
I mean, ideally, it'd be great to have.
It is gonna
right
take a
turn
learning though
movements
for
and-
everybody. People might not like it for a little while till they kind of get
I can guarantee that.
This is a great opportunity
So it is
while
a-
we're out there working, is to make some changes there in our speed limits.
That's very
Seriously, I mean,
funny.
between Lucille
Well,
and 30th Street itself.
They're
K61.
on a temporary basis, we may
want to do that.
Yeah,
I
you
think
may
that's
want
we
to.
haven't
That's what
got that far yet.
I'm serious
Yeah.
about that, really.
What is the current speed limit?
Probably
I think it's
45.
Is it 45?
I believe
Way
it
too
is.
fast.
I believe it is.
It is really
And I can't remember
fast.
where it changes, because from
I think
Haven Bueller,
I think it changes on the other side of Lucille, because it goes
Lucille.
up to 55 out there somewhere.
just beyond
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
We lowered it down to 45 up to Inverness, because I remember we had some residents
Yeah.
there.
Inverness.
And then
Yeah.
once it gets beyond that, right around that Prairie
Right,
Dunes
Prairie
entrance,
Dunes
it goes
entrance.
Then it
to
goes to
65,
55?
or 55. yeah.
Now, long-term for Lucille, what needs to happen is on the west side of the street, right? Is that owned by Westar?
Yeah, they're on the west side, right.
It is,
Yeah.
on the northwest.
Yeah.
We need to discuss with them acquiring some of that land and put another lane in.
I mean,
Basically,
Working with the
just
school
rebuild the
district
street.
and,
yeah, that's a whole, that
Yeah.
street's been,
Reconstruct.
Yeah.
and
that's
it
a
goes
whole-
back to, and it's just, because I've been through this
Typical.
many times, and not only here,
Typical.
is we build schools.
on unimproved roads.
And it's all about the building,
It's about the building.
not about the
not
streets
about
or the
street.
traffic coming into it.
the
And
access.
so on the Plum Creek project,
About getting the
we had that
signage.
conversation and required them to build, and they
Turning
paid for
lane.
that infrastructure. But too many times we do these school bonds and we build just the building and not worry about the infrastructure. So, and this is a good example of that. Years
Good
ago,
example.
that probably should have been addressed.
Nobody thought of it.
well, John, so are you going
Well-
to go back and have conversations with 313 about a cost share?
Yeah, we're working with Jeff's folks, and they've already got some numbers here, and if that's the desire of the council, I mean, that's, because it's gonna have to happen fairly soon, that we would ask them to pay for half of the materials we're gonna install, and see if that's appropriate.
I think it's more than fair.
I do too.
Yep. So, is
Now,
that a
could you
consensus, or?
I
Yeah,
think
could this
so.
be done administratively if
Yeah.
we have consensus?
I think
Okay.
if we can
Yeah.
get consensus on that, yeah,
And we've kind of been in the process of getting everything
together.
rounded up anyway at this point.
Yeah,
So,
Jeff
'cause
and
our
his guys-
timing is pretty nailed.
short.
So
Yeah.
we've already
Yeah.
met with Westar out there on site and a number
Yeah,
of
school will
things.
be
So
here
it's
before
not
we
a,
know
Yeah,
it doesn't just happen, but, so we have to kind of
Yeah.
push it a little bit.
yeah, we're about, 30 days out?
30 days
Oh.
out, that's right.
And Jeff and his guys got busy on this and started putting some thoughts together, so appreciated that. So
Glad to hear.
I'll reach out to Superintendent Burblanger and just see where they're at on this and let them know we're ready to move if we can agree to that, so.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
And then
Okay.
the other thing, just mention our budget meeting Thursday at 8 a.m. And we really don't have any, presentations. Basically, it's just kind of continue our discussions from the last meeting. And if there's anything specifically you guys want to talk about, we can work on that. And we made a few decisions, Dave, while you were gone.
I
but,
say you miss a meeting and
it's
a
only
lot happens.
thoughts.
So, exactly. I would encourage you to sharpen your pencils. We got a little work to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
And that's really all I had, Mayor.
very good. Okay, if that's the case, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
So-
Second.
And second. Please call the roll.
Deckent?
Yes.
Dave Line?
Yes.
Soldner?
Yes.
Tyros de Carvalho?
Yes.
Inskeep?
Yes. Thank you all for coming.